Hi friends, in this video we'll create our entity, and entity is nothing but a table in the database, and we'll see how to create it through Java application, that is our airline web service, and we'll also try to test it through our SQL Developer tool. So before that, first let's make sure that we have our MySQL instance running. I'm using Docker, so you can see that MySQL container is up and running here, and it's listening to port number 3306. So what I'll do is I'll go to my SQL Developer, and here you can see that I have created a connection, flight MySQL DB, and the username is MySQL user, and the password is password that is I created using, if you look at the command that I used when creating the Docker container, I used my Docker DB as a database name, password as password, and the user as MySQL user. So I'm using the same information here, and that's what it is here. You can see the connection is made. Let me retype it. Okay, I think there was a typo. Okay, so I connected. You can see that database is Docker DB, and the tables. Okay, you see here there is a table user. This was something that I created when I was doing a demo on Docker container. So you can ignore this for now. So this is how you connect to the database through SQL Developer. Now let's go to our IDE, and we have application.properties file under resources, where by default when the application starts, the Spring Boot configures all the properties that are in the application.properties and configures our data source. So you can see here the data source URL. Here it is nothing but my SQL database, and the username and password. And there is one more option or the property that we have added, that is DDL auto update. Means if there is already a table in the database, it will use that table, and if it is not present, then it will create the table, okay, depending on the entity that we will be declaring in a while. Okay, and we also have option like create. If you see, we have create option, and what it will do is it will basically create every time it starts. It will create the a new table depending on whatever the entities we have created. Okay, but for now we'll use update, and next step is let's create the entity package. So I'll create entity package here, entity, and next I'll create the table or class that will represent our table in the database. So I'll name it as flight and finish. Now before we add any annotation, we need to add the dependencies of the database as well as data JPA, because as we in our first session where we said that we'll be using Spring Data JPA, so we need to add that plugin to our pom.xml file. So it's simple, just right click on the application, and under Spring you can see there is edit starters. Click on it, and here what we're going to do is we're going to select Spring Data JPA, or you can also search here Spring Data JPA. And next what we're going to do is we are also going to add the MySQL driver. Okay, and click on OK, and you can see that in the pom.xml those two dependencies are added. Now next we'll go back to our entity class, and we're going to add few annotations here. So to map this class to our database table, we are going to use annotation entity. Okay, I think it's my default ID is not recognizing it. Yeah, I need to refresh, I believe. Let's see. Okay, there's something wrong with my IDE. So what I'm going to do is I'll just reopen it and see if it is able to. Yeah. So now you can see that I have entity annotation that is in the persistence package. That is nothing but coming from our JPA plugin, JPA dependency that we added. So next what I'm going to do is we can also add name to our table by using name option. And what we'll do is we'll name it as flight. Okay, just name it as flight. And this will now create a table called flight in our DockerDB database. Now let's start adding columns to this table or the class. This entity is basically a simple Pojo class. Okay, so the first what we're going to do is we'll add all this. Let's copy this from here and paste it here. So what I'm going to do is first I'll add it as private. First is my ID. So what I'll do is I'll keep this as integer. I'll use a wrapper class. That is a good practice to use always wrapper class rather than the primitive data type. Private integer, and I'll name it as ID. Then I'll go to the private string and I'll name it as flight number. And next private integer, and I'll say capacity. Capacity is nothing but the number of seats. And private, I'll say manufactured by, and it's going to be of type string. And private, then I'm going to use it as local date, date, and this is something about manufactured on, MFD on. Perfect. So we have this all the columns ready. Now what we're going to do is we are going to name it. So what I'll do is I'll use @column annotation and I'll name this as, and you can see we have different annotations here. If you, it can be nullable or not, or unique and all those. So what we're going to do is we are going to use name, and I'll name this as flight ID. And next also I'm going to do this as basically we can add one more annotation called as @ID that says that this is nothing but your primary key. Okay, flight ID is going to be your primary key. And also what I'll do is I will auto generate this. Okay, so for that auto generation of the ID we use generated value. You can see we have generated value, and in this I'm going to use it as generator, and I'm going to use it as generator strategy. I believe that is what we are going to do, and I'll say auto. Okay, so what will happen is every time I insert a row in the database, I don't need to give the ID. It will automatically increment the value, and that will be our ID. Next is string flight number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this as column. I'll just name it and the name annotation and use this as flight number. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to say this as nullable false, because it cannot be null. Okay, and the same way capacity @column. Okay, and if you don't define if you don't give an annotation column, it automatically takes whatever the variable name here is, it will take that. Okay, and well, it's good practice that we just add it capacity, and again this also cannot be null, and I'll say this as false. And same way I'll add manufactured by column, name this as MFDY, and again this cannot be nullable, false. So I copy this and paste it here, and this I'll rename it to on. Okay, perfect. And I'll remove this thing. Okay, perfect. Now we need to create the getters and setters. I use the shortcuts Control Alt Shift S. That will open up the window, and here you can just click on the getters and setters. I'll select all and click generate. And same way I'll also create hash code methods, and I'll generate hash code and equals method, and I'll just do is use objects hash methods equal. So I'll use this, and that's it. I'll just say, and I don't want all of it because I know that ID is going to be unique, so ID is enough for me. Okay, so I'll just say generate. Perfect. So that's it. So we have our table ready, and also we have defined all the columns. Okay, so now what we're going to do is let's run this and see what happens in the database. Okay, so right click on the application and run this. Let's see the console, and you can see it is initializing all our database properties, and perfect, the application is up and running. So let's go to our database here and refresh this. Okay. And you can see that we have flight table created and the columns that we have in our application. See, exactly the same thing. And you can see the definitions of this, like if it is int, that's what we have given the capacity, and the flight ID and the flight number as varchar, and manufactured on is the date. So perfect. That's all. That's how we create tables using the Java classes. And what we did is, we created an entity class, and we added some annotations and also some columns. And if you see ID, this is nothing but primary key. And if you go to the database, and you can see it will give you the description of, if you look at the constraint, it says primary key. And let's look at the, if you look at the generated value, once we try to insert a value into the database, into this table, what will happen is it will automatically generate a value for ID. So, and what we did is we also added all the properties in the application.properties file. And what the Spring Boot will do is, when starting the application, it will load these properties and configure our data source. And next, before that, what we did is we added the Spring Data JPA dependency and the MySQL driver to our pom.xml file. So I guess it's you got how we can create entities and map the entities to the table in our database. That's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next session.